By the time I saw the notification from Good Morning America, my phone had already been buzzing for 20 minutes straight. I was sitting in the green room, waiting to go on air, and I hadn't checked who was calling. I knew. Deep down, I always knew this moment would come. But let me back up. The night before my book launch party, I was alone in my apartment, surrounded by advance copies of my debut novel. The covers gleamed under the soft light of my reading lamp. The Forgotten Daughter by Emma Hayes. My name, my story, my words. I'd sent the invitation to my parents 6 weeks earlier. A simple card with the bookstore's address, the date, the time. I'd even written a note on the back. It would mean everything to have you there. My mom texted back 3 days later. Emma, we're so proud of you. But your brother's receiving an award from the medical board that same evening. We can't miss it. You understand. I stared at those words for a long time. You understand. As if understanding made it hurt less. As if this was the first time. As if I hadn't spent 32 years understanding. I typed back, that's okay. And I meant it. Not in a passive-aggressive way. Not in a I'm going to make them pay way. I meant it in the way you mean it when you finally, truly accept that some people will never see you the way you need them to. I called my best friend Maya instead. They're not coming, I said. I know, she replied. She always knew. So we're going to make this the best book launch party anyone has ever seen. Without them. The thing about having parents who don't see you is that you learn early how to build your own support system. Maya had been my friend since college. She'd read every draft of every story I'd ever written. She'd brought me coffee during all-nighters. She'd held my hand when I got my first 100 rejection letters. And she wasn't the only one. There was James, my writing group leader, who'd believed in my manuscript when I wanted to burn it. There was Sophie, my literary agent, who'd fought for me in ways my own parents never had. There was even my landlord, Mrs. Chen, who'd reduced my rent during the 2 years I was writing full-time and barely eating. These were my people. The day of the launch party, I woke up without an alarm. Sunlight was streaming through my windows. I made coffee, slow and deliberate, the way my therapist had taught me. I was allowed to feel sad. I was allowed to wish things were different. But I was also allowed to be happy for myself. The bookstore had transformed overnight. Someone, probably Maya, had strung fairy lights across every shelf. There were flowers everywhere, white roses. My favorite, though I'd never mentioned it to the bookstore owner. People started arriving at 6. The event wasn't until 7, but they came early. Writers I'd met at conferences, readers who'd followed my blog for years, book club members, strangers who'd seen the event listing and were curious. By 7, the place was packed. Standing room only. I stood behind the podium, looking at all these faces, and I felt something I'd never felt before at a family event. I felt seen. I read the first chapter, the one about a girl whose brother gets all the presents at Christmas while she gets books wrapped in newspaper. The one about a girl who learns that sometimes being invisible is its own kind of power. The one about a girl who decides to write her own story instead of waiting for someone else to give her a role in theirs. When I finished, the room was silent for 3 seconds. Then someone started clapping. Then everyone. It wasn't polite applause. It was the kind that makes your chest tight and your eyes sting. During the Q&A, someone asked, "Is this autobiographical?" I paused. In the back of the room, I could see Maya watching me. She knew the answer. "Yes," I said. "This book is about what happens when you're not the chosen child, when you're the backup plan, the afterthought. But it's also about what happens when you choose yourself instead." The signing line took 3 hours. My hand cramped. I ran out of advance copies and had to promise people they could get signed book plates later. An older woman, probably in her 70s, came through the line crying. "I was the forgotten daughter too," she whispered. "Thank you for writing this." That's when it hit me. This book wasn't just my story anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd ever felt invisible in their own family. Around 10, when the crowd had thinned and the bookstore owner was starting to hint about closing time, my phone rang. I turned it to silent during the reading and hadn't checked it since. 37 missed calls. 23 text messages. All from my parents. The first text, sent at 7:15, said, "Emma, why are there so many people at your event? Your brother's award ceremony is on the hospital's website live stream. We're watching. But someone just showed us your Instagram story." I'd forgotten that Maya had been posting. The crowd. The flowers. The line of people waiting for signatures. The bookstore's official photos showing the room packed to capacity. The second text, 7:32. Is this some kind of publicity stunt? How did you get all these people there? The third text, 7:48. Emma, call us. We need to talk about this. I didn't read the rest. Not then. I went home with Maya, Sophie, and James. We ordered Thai food and sat on my tiny balcony, looking at the city lights. They were talking about the reading, about the turnout, about how the bookstore owner said it was the biggest launch they'd hosted in years. I was quiet, picking at my pad thigh. They called. I finally said. Maya nodded. Of course they did. 37 times. Guilt, James said simply. They saw what they missed. No, I said, surprising myself with how clear my voice was. They saw what other people thought was valuable. That's different. Sophie raised her glass. To the difference between being valued and being valuable. We clinked glasses. Mine was water because I don't drink, but it felt like champagne. The next morning, I had 17 more missed calls. I made coffee. I did my morning pages, a habit from my writing practice. I meditated for 10 minutes. Then I listened to the voicemails, my mother's voice, tight with something between anger and panic. Emma, your father and I are very confused. We saw that your book event was quite large. We didn't realize it was such a big deal. You should have told us. We would have rearranged our schedule. My father's voice, gruff. Your mother is upset. She's been crying all morning. She saw someone posted a video of your reading on Facebook. It has 40,000 views. Emma, why didn't you tell us this was going to be such a big event? Because you didn't ask, I thought. Because you never asked. 3 days later, I got the email. It was from a producer at Good Morning America. They'd seen the viral video of my reading. A book blogger with 1 million followers had shared it, saying this is the most powerful thing I've seen in years. The clip had been viewed over 2 million times now. They wanted me on the show. The following week, national television. I sat with that information for a full day before I told anyone. Not because I was scared, not because I was waiting for my parents' approval, but because I wanted to feel it first, to own it, to know that this was mine before anyone else's reaction could touch it. When I finally called Sophie, she screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Do you know what this means? She said. Do you know how many authors dream of this? I did know. I dreamed of it too, in the quiet moments between rejections. The GMA segment was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I took the train to New York the day before, stayed in a hotel that the show paid for. I practiced my talking points with the producer. I tried on 3 different outfits before settling on the simple black dress that Maya said made me look like a writer, not someone trying to look like a writer. I didn't tell my parents about the TV appearance. I didn't tell my brother. I didn't post about it on social media. I wanted this moment to be clean, unpolluted by the old patterns, the old pain, the old need for validation that had never come. The morning of the show, I was in hair and makeup at 5:30 a.m. The stylist was kind, chatting about her own family drama, never knowing how much her words mirrored my own story. By the time I walked onto the set, under those bright lights, sitting across from the host, I felt calm, clear, ready. The host asked about the book, about the title, about why I'd written it. I told the truth. This book is for anyone who's ever felt invisible in their own family, I said. For anyone who's been the backup plan, the afterthought, the one who's expected to understand when they're pushed aside. But it's also about the family you choose, the people who show up, the people who see you. Your book launch went viral, the host said. 3 million views now. What was that experience like? Surreal, I admitted, but also validating. Not because I need validation anymore, but because it confirmed what I'd learned while writing this book. That my story matters. That I matter. Even if certain people in my life never saw it that way. Are you talking about your family? The host asked gently. I paused. I thought about my parents, probably watching this right now. My brother, who might have his TV on in the break room at the hospital. I'm talking about the journey from needing people to see you to seeing yourself, I said. That's the real story. The interview lasted 6 minutes. By the time I was back in the green room, my phone was already buzzing. This time, I let it ring. I watched the calls come in. My mother, my father, my brother, for the first time in 6 months. Even my aunt, who I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them suddenly invested in my story now that other people were paying attention. Maya texted, "You were perfect." Sophie texted, "Book presales just jumped 400%. You're going to be a bestseller." Mrs. Chen texted, "Saw you on TV at the dentist office. So proud." I sat in that green room, holding my phone, watching my old life try to push its way into my new one. And I felt something I'd never felt before. Power. Not power over them. Power over myself. The power to choose who got access to my joy. The power to decide which relationships I wanted to invest in. The power to say no without guilt. I called Maya instead. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said. That afternoon, my book hit #3 on Amazon. By evening, it was #1. My publisher called to say they were fast-tracking a second printing. Sophie was fielding calls from foreign rights agents, audiobook producers, movie scouts. My parents called 6 more times. I didn't answer. Not because I was punishing them, but because I was busy. Genuinely busy. Doing interviews, planning my book tour, writing thank you notes to readers who'd sent me messages about how my story had helped them. 3 days after the GMA appearance, I finally called them back. My mother answered on the first ring. "Emma," she breathed. "We've been so worried. Why haven't you been answering?" "I've been working," I said simply. "We saw you on television. The whole family watched. Emma, we had no idea your book was such a big deal. You should have told us how important your launch party was. We would have been there." I took a breath, one that came from my core, from that place my therapist called your center. "Mom," I said, "I did tell you. 6 weeks before, I sent you an invitation. I wrote you a note asking you to come. But you didn't say it was going to be this big. You made it sound like a small thing." "It was a small thing," I said. 50 people in a bookstore. But those 50 people showed up because they wanted to, not because it was on TV. There was a long silence. "Are you angry with us?" she asked finally. "No," I said. And it was true. I'm not angry. I'm just done needing you to show up. I've built a life with people who do show up. That's where my energy is now. "But we're your family," she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. "You are," I agreed. "But family isn't just about blood. It's about who holds you up, who celebrates you, who sees you. And Mom, you've never really seen me. Not as I am, only as how I compare to my brother. That's not fair." "Maybe not, but it's true." Another silence. "Longer this time. We'd like to see you," she said finally. "When you have time. Your father and I, we'd like to talk." "Maybe," I said, "when I'm ready. Right now, I'm focused on my tour. I'm going to 20 cities in 2 months. I'm meeting readers, doing signings, living this dream I've had since I was 8 years old." "We're proud of you," she whispered. "Thank you," I said. "But I don't need you to be proud anymore. I need you to have been present, and you weren't. So now I'm building something with the people who were." I hung up feeling lighter than I had in years. The book tour was everything I'd imagined and more. In Chicago, a woman told me she'd cut contact with her parents after reading my book. In Seattle, a teenage girl asked me to sign her copy, to the future best-selling author. In Austin, a man in his 50s cried during the Q&A, talking about how he'd always been invisible next to his sister. Every city, every bookstore, every reader reminded me of the same truth. I wasn't alone. My story wasn't unique in its pain, but it was powerful in its healing. By the time I came home, 3 months later, The Forgotten Daughter had been on the New York Times bestseller list for 8 weeks. I'd done 37 interviews. I'd signed over 4,000 books. I'd been recognized on the street 5 times, which was bizarre and wonderful and terrifying all at once. My apartment felt smaller somehow. Or maybe I'd just grown. There was a package waiting at my door. From my parents. Inside was a hardcover copy of my book, which they must have bought at a bookstore, along with a card. The card said, "We read it. We understand now. We're sorry. When you're ready, we'd like to try again. Love, Mom and Dad." I put the card on my fridge, not in a place of honor, but not in the trash either. Just there. A possibility, not a promise. Maya came over that night. We ordered Chinese food and sat on my balcony, the same place we'd sat the night of the launch party. "Do you think you'll talk to them?" she asked. "Maybe," I said. "Eventually. But not because I need their approval anymore. If I talk to them, it'll be because I choose to, not because I'm still that little girl hoping they'll finally see me. What changed? Maya asked. I thought about it. About the book launch they'd missed, about the viral video they'd seen secondhand, about the TV appearance they'd watched with everyone else, about all the moments they hadn't been there, and all the moments I'd been held up by people who chose me. I stopped waiting for them to show up, I said, and I started celebrating the people who already had. That night, after Maya left, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank page. I'd been toying with an idea for my second novel. A story about a woman who throws herself a birthday party every year, inviting only the people who truly love her, and how that list changes and grows over time. I started typing. And this time, I wasn't writing to be seen by my family. I was writing to be seen by myself, writing to celebrate the life I'd built from the scraps they'd left me, writing to honor every person who'd shown up when it mattered. The phone rang one more time that night. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. Not forever. Just for now. Because I was writing, and that was more important. Because I'd learned the difference between being available and being accessible. Because I'd finally understood that the most important person who needed to show up for me was me. And I had. I was here. I was present. I was whole. The voicemail notification appeared. I didn't listen to it. Instead, I kept writing, the words flowing like water, like light, like all the things I'd been holding back for 32 years. In the morning, I'd decide about my parents, about whether to build a bridge or simply wish them well from a distance, about what forgiveness looked like when it wasn't required for my peace. But tonight, I was exactly where I needed to be. In my apartment, surrounded by my books, my words, my chosen family, just a phone call away. Tonight, I was enough. Not because my parents finally saw me on television. Not because strangers validated my story. Not because I'd achieved something they deemed worthy of their attention. But because I'd always been enough. I just needed to believe it myself. And now, finally, I did.